if you've been a gamer for a while now, what is wrong with you? Then you'll probably remember back in the early 2000s, coming home from school, plopping your ass down on the living room carpet, and launching this beauty. Oh no, fuck, not that! Yes, I don't need to sit here and bore you with a 10-hour-long video essay on what this console is and what it did for not only Sony but for the gaming industry as a whole. I don't need to go into a massive tangent on why it had one of the best launch lineups, how this console is the console that birthed many beloved franchises, some of which are still going strong to this day. Yes, I'm willingly going to skip over every single nitty-gritty detail about this console so I can just get to the point of this video, because I value your time. But the topic of today's video is quite an interesting one. As we know, since 2022, Sony finally launched its competitor to Xbox Game Pass, and that being the new PlayStation Plus. And I'm aware a lot of people give this service a lot of shit, but for me personally, I actually really like PlayStation Plus. It was my way of experiencing a lot of PlayStation's exclusives I always wanted to try out, along with a few games that Xbox Game Pass doesn't have. But where the criticisms start making a little bit more sense to me is the way how Sony handles games from their previous generations on here. Because along with the launch of the service, you could also play a select few PlayStation 1 and PSP games on the service, provided you forked over some of your hard-earned money to subscribe to PlayStation Deluxe, which, okay, that's kinda bullshit when you consider that Game Pass has a bunch of 360 and OG Xbox games on there for no additional charge. But we'll get into that topic another day. Any case, as of recently, PlayStation has decided to expand the library of compatible games to the service to include some PS2 games, with more of them coming in the future. Now, I'm quite aware that this is a topic that I'm very late to, but I don't care. I wanted to take a little bit of a look at how Sony deals with including their greatest console onto their service, and to do that, allow me to boot up my PS4 and take a look at the available games we can download and play. But before that, here's an intro. Subscribe. So to properly get started with these comparisons, I only feel that it's appropriate to compare some of the already existing PS2 games that are already available for the PS4. The three that I own personally are Red Faction 1 and 2 and Metal Slug Anthology, but there are a hell of a lot more than that, with a bunch of Rockstar's games, Jak and Daxter, and some Star Wars games just to name a few. But for me personally, I only took a look at Red Faction and Metal Slug to see how PS2 games were handled before the service. And from all my time playing these games to get footage for this video, as well as just in my spare time, these are basically, to my knowledge, just by-the-book upscale ports. Everything pretty much remaining untouched from the original PS2 releases, aside from these games now also having trophy support, which is a nice touch for people who are trying to compensate for something. But besides all that, they're great ports, they run fine, they play fine, with maybe a few of them having a little bit of input lag, but other than that, you can have fun with these ports on the PS4 or 5. But now that we got a little palate cleanser in mind to see how it was handled before the launch of the games on the service, it's time to see how the new games handle themselves, and what better place to start than... So a little history lesson for you here real quick. I don't know how obvious I've been making it on this channel that I am a massive Star Wars fan, but out of all of the games I've played set in this universe, this is the one game that I never really even knew existed. Yeah, you can put me on the council and not grant me the rank of master, because I guess me not knowing that this game existed makes me deserve it. But before I get into the game itself, allow me to actually talk about what these new PS2 games contain now that they're being placed on PS Plus. Well, firstly, they'll happily give you a warning before each game launches to tell you just to not play video games. And secondly, much like the PS1 games that are available on the service, the PS2 games contain almost one-to-one the exact same features. You'll get stuff like visual presets that give you different filters, modern essentially just boosting the game's saturation so it can look like a clickbait commentary channel thumbnail, and the classic and modern arcade settings just giving you the CRT filter plastered all over the screen, because who misses the day when the whole fucking screen looked like it was part of an analog dog horror creepypasta. But unlike the PS1 emulated games, this time we don't really get to customize each game's aspect ratio. Each one will be set to whatever the game chooses. Moving on from that, we're still able to create save states at any point of the games that we're playing and load back to them whenever we want. And after that, you also get to customize your controller layout, and you can change each game's region to either NTSC or PAL. Now, the final thing that I've noticed that PS1 emulated games on the service don't have is this enhancements panel, which confused me a little bit because what kind of enhancements could this give us that we already didn't have? But by hovering over it, we get this option to select yes or no, and this description over here stating that the enhancements may alter the experience of the original game. So I was extremely curious, but I ultimately had to do a facepalm because enhancements is just basically the rewind feature that was already available by default on the PS1 and PSP games. And to my knowledge, that's pretty much all the stuff I was able to notice in terms of features if you choose to play these PS2 games. But I also feel that it's important to mention that I am playing all of these games on the PS4. So if there's any more features and extra little knickknacks available on the PS5, then feel free to let me know in the comments below, because I don't really feel like buying a console that has no games in order to do my own research. In any case, with all of that out of the way, let's actually get back to the game. So Star Wars The Clone Wars is a mostly vehicle combat game set during the events of Episode 2, and this game was actually developed by Pandemic Studios. And for those of you who are wondering, no, it wasn't the studio founded during COVID. It's actually the studio that is best known for creating the beloved Battlefront games, and not the recently released ports that made you want to turn to the dark side. And basically, this game was sort of the building blocks to what eventually would become the Battlefront games. So this is at the very least a cool little piece of history for those of you who are into that stuff. But when it comes down to the actual game, I didn't really like this one all that much. Everything about the game, though, I will have to say is pretty faithful to the source material, that being that there's a lot of sand. In this game, you take control of vehicles like these tanks, these aerial sections where you get to fly around in these ships, and the best part out of this entire game, these on-foot sections where you get to control a Jedi with arthritis. And in each of these missions, you need to traverse these massive maps, collecting health pickups and weapon power-ups, and destroying an ass ton of vehicles in order to finish your objectives, which also includes you needing to blow something up. Now, if that isn't enough cause for Michael Bay to be signed to direct a Star Wars film in the future, then I don't know what is. And it pretty much goes the exact same for the airborne sections, except for the obvious fact that there seems to be no more ground below us, so I really hope vertigo doesn't start to set in. But to me personally, my favorite part of the entire experience was actually taking control of Mace Windu on death sticks and actually controlling him as we destroy an ass ton of droids and Geonosians. And judging by this gameplay and how Mace looks like he's trying to battle enemies while he's having a seizure, I find it fascinating how we were able to participate in this war to begin with. Now, the reason I say I didn't really like this game all too much isn't because the game is bad necessarily, it's just because I'm not the biggest fan of the whole vehicle-centric gameplay. And in their attempts to spice things up with the on-foot sections, yeah, you don't need me to tell you why this is bad. And that wouldn't be such a humongous issue if the game had some more variety in the objectives. But from what I've played and looked up on YouTube, it seems like they just repeat the whole exact destroy everything on each level until we tell you to piss off to a new planet to do exactly the same thing all over again. I'd still at the very least highly recommend you try the game out though, because maybe there's something in it that you see that I don't, and I'd at the very least 100% recommend it if you want to see where the blueprint for the Battlefront games were laid out. But for me personally, I'm just gonna have it sit here on my PS4 as a nice little novelty to remind us of where Star Wars games were at the time. So, with that out of the way, let's move over to our next game. Now, a quick thing that I want to bring up that I find extremely funny is that there's a massive inconsistency with how this game is being presented if you choose to download it over here in PAL territories. So as everyone should know, this game is called Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus. Awesome name, I must say. I think I came up with this type of shit when I was in preschool. But you'll also notice that over here, we have the cover art for it known as Sly Raccoon, which, another history lesson here, yes, Sly Raccoon is what the game was known as back when it released on the PS2 back in 2002, because apparently in PAL territories, the word Cooper is a very no-no word according to Cat Icarus. But what I find funny is that on the page for the game, it'll stay Sly Raccoon, but when you want to go over to download it, it'll change back to Sly Cooper and the Thievius Raccoonus, and it will still have the original title of Sly Raccoon if you want to launch it on your console. So, Sony, could you make up your fucking mind, please? Do you want the title where Europeans will find it naughty, or do you want want to have the title where if you remove the first half of the word, you're gonna make a lot of people unhappy. In any case, out of all the games I was the most excited for when I heard they were bringing PS2 games over to the service was this game and the next game on the list, because I absolutely loved the first Sly Cooper game. I played and beaten it on the PS3 collection, so much so that this was one of the first few games I actually managed to platinum on that system. And while that version wasn't the one ported to current gen systems, it's still the exact same game I played and loved all the way back when I first originally played it in high school. So basically, if you know what Sly Cooper is, then we can be friends. This was the first successful franchise developed by Sucker Punch Studio, a company that's now best known for the game where a Japanese man brutally slaughters Mongolians. And these are primarily stealth platform games that are probably best known in the second game onwards to have gigantic maps you're able to explore and complete missions that have you sneaking and exploring around to get your missions done. But in the first game, there was none of that. You first get your prologue mission, select a hub area that you want to go to from your van, and then from this hub area you can select whatever mission you'd like to do, and the goal is to reach the end of them in order to collect whatever MacGuffin you need to in order to get to the main boss. In the first Sly game, there's not really a giant open map for you to explore, and you don't really have a health bar, only a certain amount of hit points which you can increase by grabbing onto these horseshoes. And the stealth is more of an implied thing because yes, you do have stealth elements in the game, but it's more just mainly the game's way of giving you a more hazardous obstacle to overcome if you fuck up, which I do think is fair. But only now if you choose to play it on the PS4, the rewind feature kinda negates the need for skill because now you can just go back to the point before you messed up, so no harm, no foul. But all jokes aside, this game, as well as the rest of the series, is fucking awesome. I won't go into too much depth in this video because I do want to make a video on the Sly games at some point, so until then, play this for now and hopefully the other games get added too. So what do we have next? Oh boy, how I was so surprised yet so happy to see this puppy get added to the library. Tomb Raider Legend is without a doubt my favorite Tomb Raider game of all time. I think this is where Crystal Dynamics really perfected not only the gameplay, puzzles, and combat, but Lara's cleavage. And since this is an emulation of the PS2 version of the game, I finally can say I've played nearly every single version of Tomb Raider Legend. And can I just say that I'd almost argue that I think playing the PS2 version of this game is my preferred way of playing it, just in terms of the visuals alone. You see, I've always played this game on either the Xbox 360 or PS3, where there was a shit ton more graphical fidelity, sure, but I do think that the models and environments look way too outdated for this to be acceptable for those systems. But if you play the PS2 version, everything just fits in so much better, because it was designed with this next generation of consoles in mind. So I'd almost argue that if you want to get into what I think is the best Tomb Raider game, this is definitely the best place to do it. And also, much like the Sly games, this game means way too much for me to just give it a small little look through here. So until I make a proper video talking about this gem, I attempted to speedrun this game on my second channel, which you can watch up here. I had quite a lot of fun. Oh, specifically, dude, that is a series I want to... Son of a fucking bitch! Fucking son of a bitch! A lot of fun. Also follow my fucking Now here I'm 100% stepping into Uncharted territory, and for whatever reason in my script I wrote Uncharted with an uppercase because I just love those games as well, so go play them too. Nathan Drake is hotter than law. Any case, Ghost Hunter was a game that I've always heard of through YouTube videos like Metal Jesus Rocks or PlayStation 2 Hidden Gems video, but never really gave the game a second thought until now. And I've gotta say, damn it, this game was actually pretty sweet. The game is a horror game with a humorous touch almost like the medieval games on PlayStation, and that all starts from the second you load into the game and see this prick knock on your monitor. That's why my TV is fucked. But after you get past this intro set in medieval times and see Morpheus here whip out 2 ARs, you can bet your ass I was both hooked and confused. And in this game, you take control of Yakko Warner.
Keep the gun away.
So what is this place?
Read the sign.
Yeah, what I meant was...
And the first moments of this game, you start to investigate this weird abandoned building to find... something, I guess. I don't know. I wasn't really paying too much attention to the story. And just right off the bat, can I just say that this game for a PS2 game looks absolutely amazing. The fidelity and stuff like character models, animations, lighting, atmosphere, it all looks so damn good, and you can easily fool someone into thinking that this was an early PS3 or 360 game thanks to the upscaling. It's just that good. Any case, after gawking at the graphics, you take control of Rob Paulsen exploring these dilapidated environments, fighting off ghosts. It's almost like that's the name of the game. And from what I vividly remember by watching all those videos about this game, is that they mentioned that this is the very first good example of us getting a Ghostbusters game before we actually got a real one back in 2009. The reason why I say this is that when you're engaged in combat with the ghosts, your main thing is that you need to weaken them with your weapons first, which also include a Glock for some reason, so it would seem to me that not even spirits are free from the Second Amendment, and then when you weaken them enough, you need to throw this grenade at them that catches them, and if the Ghostbusters inspiration wasn't obvious enough then I don't know how else to explain it. And with this being a horror game and all, you'll sometimes need to do some puzzles. Now, I only played this for around an hour or so I don't really know how the puzzles are going to be handled in the future, but the one that I was able to do was in certain places you'll find the sigil on the floor, and after interacting with it, you take control of this ghost woman busy having a fit in the air. And by the looks of it, she has the ability to copy the abilities of larger ghosts, and this is what she'll probably use to finish most of the puzzles, which I think is really cool. The one part that I wasn't too big of a fan of and is where I decided to stop playing is this part here where you need to stealth your way behind this little prick over here so he can open doors for you to progress. So I don't know how stealth is going to be implemented further into the game, but from what I've already experienced so far, I'm very keen to jump back into it after this video is done, because this was probably the most fun I've had going through all of these games with the exceptions of the ones I've played and beaten years before. And with all of that out of the way, I guess let's head over to our final game. Okay, so I saw that this was actually a PSP game and not the PS2 version of LEGO Star Wars 2, but that doesn't change the fact that Larry the Scout Trooper here wasn't able to play it because for some stupid reason you can only download it on the PS5, which neither me or Larry has. So I guess we'll just cry our eyes out because we can't play the inferior version of a beloved game on your stupid service, so... Why would you do that, Sony? But with all of that out of the way, I would 100% say that this is a worthwhile addition to the PS Plus library. I do really wish that they would have added a little bit more games, but these were just to test the waters just to see what they're able to do. And with all the additions of like save states, rewinds, all that stuff that the PS1 and PSP games already had, I've got to say I'm quite excited to see what else they're going to add for the PlayStation 2 library going forward. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you guys actually like the additions of some PS2 games, or do you still think that PS Plus is a little bit of a too overpriced variant on a gaming subscription service? But in any case, I've been John from the channel with the freakishly long name. Thank you all so much for watching the video. If you guys liked the video, please consider liking and subscribing. If you want to support the channel, then maybe please consider becoming a Patreon or a channel member. And speaking of that, thank you so much to Patreon member Mr. Aftonboy. Once again, I've been John from the channel with the freakishly long name, and I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye. Love you.